The man is just out here killing teenage girls all over. Hello my dear friends, my name is Sanne and welcome back to another video. I am back with part 2 of the Gardener King series, which is a book series we're reviewing on this channel. In my book review, chaotic, get ready with me all over the place videos. So today I'm gonna tell you all about book 2 in this trilogy, which is called We All Hunger by Monica Boothe. I'm just gonna jump at you right away with a few warnings, because first of all, this is part 2, like I just said, this is part 2. So if you haven't watched video 1 yet, you should go and do that right now before you watch part 2, because you'll be extremely confused probably, because this story just takes right off where we left it. And also, if you still wanna read this series, don't watch this video, please. Please do not watch this video. You can watch the beginning of video 1, where I'll give you a short spoiler-free summary of this series, so you can decide if you still want to read it or not. I must admit, I have been having a lot of fun reading this series, so it has some bad parts to it, but it's definitely not all bad. The writing is pretty good. I've been enjoying reading it, so if you still want to read it, go listen to that summary. Make sure that you know for sure if you want to read the book or not. Then either watch the video, come back to this one, or read the book and then watch my videos, and then we can have a fun little discussion about all our thoughts in the comments. And it can be like a little book club. Yes, we're gonna jump into book 2 today, and it's gonna be spoilers all over the place. We're just gonna discuss the entirety of the book, and we're gonna discuss my thoughts on it, if I enjoyed it, if I didn't enjoy it. And I'm also gonna do my makeup in the meantime. This is what I always do. You know, my makeup inspired by the book, and I'm gonna talk about the book. I'm just gonna do my makeup. I'm just gonna get started, and then I'm gonna tell you the summary of the story to you. So, this is We All Hunger by Monica Boothe, book 2 in the Gardener Kings series. Book 1 is called The Gardener Kings. I was initially drawn in by the amazing covers, and then I had some thoughts. So that's why we're reading this series today. Let's jump into it. So we start out about 2 weeks after book 1 ended. And, you know, there's immediately some sort of convenient thing going on, because that's the thing that I noticed throughout book 1 as well. Everything happens quite conveniently. Like, whenever we need to meet a certain person, we'll meet them. And whenever we need to be somewhere, we'll be there. And it's very, very, very convenient all the time. Like, we just happen to run into these people. We just happen to already be in the spot where we need to be. There's a lot of convenience going on. And book 2 starts the same way. Because book 2 starts in the castle, actually, or near the castle. Ceolach's I don't think I've used this name a lot in a previous video. Ceolach's castle. Ceolach, for who doesn't remember, is the magistrate who took over the country, Garrett, the country, and chased away the previous king, who is the Gardener King, and who is the adoptive father of Inian, our main character. Inian at the end of book 1 has left her brother slash lover, Rian, with good for her, I guess, because I'm still weirded out by that. I still am. But she has dumped him, and she has walked towards Ceolach's castle, which is of course the castle that used to be her adoptive father's. And the thing is, Inian is like, I just found out Ceolach is my dad. I want to know more about him. I want to figure out what he's like, if he's a nice person or not. Because of course she's heard quite a lot of good things from everyone in Garrett. While she's heard all the most terrible things from the people living on the island. Like, all her first 17 years of her life, she was taught that Ceolach is the evil traitor, and he's a terrible liar, manipulator, and everything. And then she gets to Garrett, and everyone here is like, oh my god, we freaking love him. He's the absolute best. She wants to figure out, like, what is he really like? Which of course is a good idea, but that is apparently her thought process before the book starts, because that's not actually what we'll see in the book. The book starts when she's already working at the castle, and then she tells the story that she's went over there to ask for a job, and she just lied that she was from Glasgow, which is where the horse people came from, basically. So they were like, oh my god, we need a new horse master. You're from Glasgow, so you should be amazing with horses. You're hired. So she immediately starts working in the castle, even though she has never even ridden a horse before. And it has already been 2 weeks of her working and living there. And she's like, yeah, I want you to work here so I can see my dad. But in the full 2 weeks, I haven't seen even a sight of him. Because he's in the castle. And they make me live out in the stalls with the horses. So she didn't really like that, which, like, I get it. So she's like grumpy, like, oh, and I still haven't seen my father, which confused me quite a bit in the beginning of the book, because from the moment she has heard that Ceallaigh is her blood-related father, she immediately stops calling Atha father and starts calling Ceallaigh father. And I'm like, girly, how can you make this switch yourself so easily? Like, I at least I would personally just mess up calling the one and the other father, you know? So in the beginning it also wasn't really clear who she meant when she said father, but in general in this book, if she says father, she means Ceallaigh. But yeah, this is basically the first 2 pages. She's explaining that she's in the castle now, and she's like, I haven't seen my father yet. Even though I've been here for 2 weeks, and it's annoying me. And right at that moment, of course, convenient, Ceallaigh walks out to her, and he's like, we're gonna go for a ride, come with me. So they ride over to Glasgow. Inion is just basically trying her best because the horses basically hate her. She's basically never ridden a horse before, so, you know, it all goes great. But they get to Glasgow, and when they get there, they notice that there's a raid going on. So basically the evil people from Lockmore are raiding the village for food, and it happens right when they get there. And Ceallaigh is like, oh my god, I need to save them. So this old man, I guess he's like 40 or something, he goes in, like, blades are swinging, like, I'm chasing these riders out of here. And he does. So Inion is like, oh my god, he is truly as fearless and awesome as everyone says he is. So that basically drives home the point for her, like, he is what people say he is over here. So the people here are correct, and what they've been telling me all my life has been a lie. So that is nice. She knows what to believe in now, finally, because throughout book 1 it was very difficult for her to choose basically what to believe in. But now we know. What does she do? She's like, I need to tell this man that I'm his daughter. But she's like, I don't know, she's a bit hesitant about it. She feels like there's not really a good moment for it. And she wants to get to know the man better. So she just keeps living there under the name Nora. And she just keeps working there. And this man is like, okay, wait, we can't let you keep sleeping in the stables all the time. So we're gonna offer you a bed in the castle and you're just gonna sleep in there, just like everybody else in this building. Which is not that many, basically. I think there's 5 or 6 people working for the king. So it's really not many. So she now has a bed in the castle. And there's like 6 or 5 other people there, like I said. And one of those people is actually quite significant. Because the moment Inion has to go into the cellar to pick some stuff up, she's followed by someone who's also just going into the cellar to pick some stuff up. And that person is basically like, oh my god, who are you? You can't be here. And he attacks her. And they have like a little brawl. And she's like, what the fuck? And then she realizes it's Phelan, the Lockmore prince that kept her as a slave for like 3 hours a few weeks ago. And he's like kind of excited about it. He's like, oh my god, Inian, I haven't seen you in a few weeks. I've been thinking about you and I didn't think I'd ever see you again. He's like quite excited about it actually, but Inian is not excited about it because she's like, you're our enemy. Why are you hiding in this castle? You're here to kill Ceallaigh. And he's like, no. No, it's not the case. I needed to hide somewhere. This is the only place I can hide where my brother would not find me. Because, of course, his brother has killed their father and taken over the throne. But he, Phelan, is the oldest. So he's actually the rightful heir to the throne. So his brother, who's called Drest, he cannot be king unless Violan is dead. So Violan needed to flee somewhere and hide somewhere. And he's like, where else than literally in the castle of the enemy? He would never find me here. So he's hiding over there and pretending to be, like, just pretending to be a help. And he's basically Karlach's right-hand man. So yeah, the first few chapters is just basically Aeneon learning to live in the castle, learning more and more about her father, learning more about taking care of horses, and also learning more about Violan and spending time with her. She does keep having big nightmares and everything about Rian, especially, where he leaves her. And she's very conflicted about that, because on the one hand, she basically left him after deciding, like, he doesn't want her, so she left him. But because he didn't want her, he rejected her earlier. It was basically he who left her. And it's just confusing. She's very confusing feelings about this. Like, she says, or she thinks, I wake every night this way with the crushing sensation that it was Rian who left me. Maybe he did, back there in the shadow world when I begged him to choose me over blood. No, in order to leave, he'd have to be mine to begin with, and he never was. So she's basically having all these nightmares about her ex-brother lover and her dad. And yeah, but she's grateful that she can live in the castle now, I guess. So just life in the castle for her, and she's growing close with Violan. And he's telling her stories and everything. So he does tell her at one point about a secret, which is the fact that Karlach, so her father, has a daughter who he hides upstairs in the castle. And no one is allowed to see her. Her name is Bronach, and basically it turns out everyone knows about her, even the people in the village know about her, but everyone knows that she is hidden up there in the castle, and no one is allowed to see her except Karlach, because she's sick or something. No one knows precisely what's wrong with her, but no one is allowed to see her, except Karlach. And he goes up to have lunch with her every single day, being a good dad, basically. And this news is, of course, like, a bit shocking to Aeneon in multiple ways. Because one, she finds out she has a sister that she didn't know about. And she's really excited. Which, it's just a strange thing to be excited about when you find out you have a sister. She is excited that she has a sister, because then she has a person that she can ask what Karlach is like, what her father is like. So she's not even excited about the fact that she has a sister. And she's like, oh my god, I have a sister. I can get to know her and I can spend time with my sister, another girl my age. No, she's just excited to have someone to ask her about what her father is like. So that's a bit weird. So anyway, on the one hand, she is very excited about it. But on the other hand, she's like, this is just another lie again. Because he's been keeping this secret. Which basically he hasn't anyway, because everyone knows about this girl, but she didn't know about it. And she's like, no one gets to see her. So Karlach is basically lying and keeping a secret. Even though she was convinced, like, Karlach doesn't lie to these people. He's like a down-to-earth guy, and he shows his feelings on his face. And he's like a good guy. So she's like a very black and white vision of this. Like, her father, Karlach, I guess, I don't even know who I mean when I say her father. But Karlach, she sees him as, like, perfect because he never lies to his people. And she sees Atha as the most terrible person on earth because he has kept a big secret from her. And basically, at this point, she's like, okay, Karlach has a secret as well. So he must be the same as Atha, and he must be terrible as well because he has kept a secret. Because she thinks, but maybe the two of them are both the same, piling up secrets like stones, one on top of the other. Which is just weird because she kind of forgets that she lives a lie herself. No one there knows who she actually is, so I don't know, she's just like, oh, but is he evil now? Just because he has one secret, and it's not even like a full secret, it's just like half a secret. But anyway, she kind of gets over it after a while. So another thing they figure out about Karlach is the fact that he is actively basically trying to hunt down a girl. And this girl, we find out, is Airless. The one we also met in book 1. So, you know, the tradeswoman who is also the granddaughter of Enion's nanny, coincidentally, and who is also, who took them in, Enion and Rian, and basically shipped them all the way into Garrett. But we kind of lost track of her after they said goodbye in Bryn, after Enion sort of slipped up and let her know that they do know her grandfather. So she knows that Enion has something to do with the previous king. And that is basically where they left off, where Enion said goodbye to her and where we haven't seen her anymore. So this is the first we hear of her, that Georg is trying to hunt her down, basically. Because she is trading with the other countries, which is not allowed, because Georg doesn't want anyone doing business with any country that is ruled by kings, basically. So he just wants to basically run into her and tell her, like, hey, can you please stop doing that, please, because we just can't have people trading with kings and such, and countries with kings. We just can't have that, I'm sorry. So that is sort of how we see Erlis fit back into the story. And you will see basically every character that we ran into in book 1 make a return in book 2. So that is kind of nice, actually. So at least all the characters that we met and that I had to talk about, sort of, like, it made sense that I was talking about them. You know, she's just living in the castle, and then we have like a scene which I found just to be very, very weird. This is somewhere in chapter 4. Inion wakes up in the middle of the night because of a nightmare again. And she just wants to basically walk downstairs so she can go outside for a little bit and get some fresh air. But then she walks past Kealach's bed, and she can hear him cry in his sleep. I made that sound myself only a few minutes ago when I woke in the darkness all alone. I thought I was all alone, only I wasn't. He isn't alone either. I'm here, right beside him. If he knew I was there, if he knew who I was, he wouldn't be making that sound. Maybe if I touch him, if I hold his hand, it will chase the nightmare away. Girl, you've met this man 3 days ago. You only heard that he is your father 2 weeks ago. You have no relationship with this guy whatsoever. Why do you think that you, this strange girl he doesn't know, holding his hand in his sleep in the dark, would make him feel better? That's just weird. That's a weird way of thinking. And at that moment, we can hear Kealach crying out in his sleep, and he basically cries out some names. First of all, he says Bronach, which is his daughter, so it's like, Bronach, please. And then she's like, oh my god, he's thinking about my sister, which makes sense. And then he says, Brennan, no. And Brennan is Atha's actual name. So this man is having nightmares about Inion's adoptive father. But why? That is interesting. And then at that moment she does actually go in and holds his hand, which is just so weird to me. But he's like pretty cool about it, so like, I guess. But now she just goes on to live there and basically spends a lot more time with Valan, which I like. Because at the end of last book I said it would be really cool if Valan came back and we would have like an enemies to lovers romance or something like that. Because I just want Rian out of the picture. And he is out of the picture now. And now Valan is here and not Rian. So what better moment to start having a romance with Valan, you know? It just makes sense. Okay, but you know, so it's giving enemies to lovers, but it's all very, very PG. There is no smut in this book. There's like 3 kisses in the entire series or something, I think. So, very, very PG. But like, I have here in my script, when I was writing this script, I was suddenly thinking like, how old is Valan actually? Because we have gotten some hints. His specific age isn't mentioned. We also don't know when Inion's birthday is, so we don't know what age she is exactly at this point. She's somewhere around 17, maybe just turned 18 or will turn 18 very soon. But we don't know Valan's age. So I did some digging. He is telling Enion that he has lived with his family in a cave for 7 years, which was during the Lokmorak Rebellion, when the king lost his throne for 7 years and he just lived in a cave. And he says that while he was young, he lived in the cave for 7 years. He didn't say how old he was when he got into the cave, but he was old enough to remember some things from before the cave, because he states that during his stay there, his younger sister was too young to remember anything from outside of the cave, so he would tell her about everything. So he does remember. So this boy does have some memory. So he has to be like at least 2, maybe 3 or 4, I guess. Especially considering that he has a younger sister who was like a couple months old, and he has a brother in between that as well. So he has to be like 3 at least when he goes into the cave. And when he went into the cave was the Lokmorak Rebellion, and that rebellion was 18 years ago, just a year before the GRWM Rebellion. So Enion is 17, approximately. This boy is somewhere between 20 and technically 28. He's basically somewhere between 20 and 28, because he was old enough to remember something from before the time, but he grew up there, so he spent his childhood there, so he couldn't have been over 11 when he got into the cave. So he was between 3 and 11 when he got into the cave, and that was 18 years ago. Anyway, I'm assuming it's more close to like 2021. It did make, I was like a bit like, oh my god, that's a bit old, like 17 and like 23, for example. Like, I'm 23, I can't ever think of going together with someone who is 17. God, that grosses me out. And then I was thinking, like, that's still better than her marrying her brother. But also, her brother was like 2 or 3 when they left. 2 years. I think I said it here. It's like 3 years older, right? Wait, I have it in my previous notes. Let me check. 3 years older. He's 3 years older. So she's 17 and he's 20. So that's basically the same as her age difference with Phalan. In that case, if she has to choose between 2 20-year-old men, so they're just a tiny bit older and she's not 18 yet, iffy but not too bad, but if she has to choose between 2 of them, please dear God tell me she doesn't choose her brother. It still weirds me out. It still does. I just had like a moment while writing the script when I had to figure that out, because I was thinking, like, I just don't know how old this man is, and maybe he's like 30, which technically he could be 29, so that would be very, very weird if he was. For the goodness of the story, I would just assume that he is 20. Yeah, one more note in between. So, okay, Phalan is 20, that's fine. They're growing to closer. It's like enemies to lovers. And then there's one thing that I noted that bothers me a bit throughout the book. There's multiple things that bother me a bit, but this one thing, she kind of like refers back to past trauma from the first book, like things that happened that were shocking, like for example that one guard that they found dead. And in this case she refers back to the shepherd, where she says the old oak tree still stands there like a blemish on the clear black earth of the hillside, gnarly and twisted and grotesquely huge. I can't see it without thinking of that shepherd's corpse, broken and rotten somewhere down in its roots. That's fine if you refer back to, but she only refers back to these specific things once throughout the book. Like once to the shepherd, once to leaving Rian basically, and once to the shadow world, once to what I just said, finding the guard. And it feels very much like we just need to mention it so everyone is clear about the fact that this is a sequel. But they're not important enough, and they didn't cause enough trauma for a character to think about it more than once. And I'm like, just leave it out. It doesn't... Things like this don't really add anything. Either make it like a thing that she's like traumatized by these things that happened, and they come back a bit throughout the story. Not too much, but a few times. You know what I mean? Anyway, she also talks a lot about rose petals, but we'll get back to that later. I need to write that down that I don't forget that, because I have some annoyance about the freaking rose petals, but I'll tell you about that later. Here in chapter 6, you're already noticing the word rose petals, and we'll come back so much more later, so much more. This is also the chapter 6, where we get to a shocking discovery. So she has been living in this house for 5 chapters. It's a few weeks, I guess. Like a month, maybe. She's getting closer to Phalan, learning about life in the castle, you know. And then Inian walks into the castle one day, and she finds Rian sitting there near the fire. Turns out he's pretending to be a farmer, and he wants to sell his goods, his fruits and everything to the king. And he wants to have like a deal that he can come back every day with new food. I am annoyed because, as you know, I just want this man's gone out of my girl's life. We don't need him. We don't like you. I don't like him. What? It's so unnecessary. I don't need that man back. They go to the cellar to have a conversation because, of course, people there can't know that they know each other already. And he's really angry at her for leaving her and just assuming that he would just go back to the island alone. So he has searched all over Garrett to find anyone everywhere. He's asked everywhere, he says. But he couldn't find her. And literally the last place he thought to look was in the castle. Because he was like, please do not be in my enemy's castle. Please do not be there. And of course she was there because the enemy is her father. And the girl has a right to get to know her father. Just because you don't like him doesn't mean she doesn't get to know him. He's like, okay, you've seen the guy, time to go. And then he was like, I'm not going. I can't go back to the island. People will hate me there because I'm his daughter. In the past few months I haven't really felt at home anywhere except here. I'm not going home. If you want to go, you can go, but I'm not going. And he's like, yeah, but I made a promise to our dad that I wouldn't keep my eye off of you, so I'm not going anywhere either then. He stays. It's just a bit toxic. Like, the girl literally says, I don't want you here. Leave. I want to stay here. And he's like, no, you're gonna do what I want. And if you don't gonna do what I want, I'm gonna stalk you until you do. Ugh, I don't like him. It's just really toxic to me, and I just really want the man to go away. But sadly, we do not get that privilege. We're just, we're skipping forward and forward. One day, Violan tells Inion, like, hey, oh my god, castle is empty right now. We can go and try and see if we can find Bronnach. Because Bronnach is her sister. She's living up there in the castle in a room with a secret door. And they were like, oh my god, we can go find her, and then you can meet your sister, and you can ask her about your father, and whatever. So they run up, find the door, go into the bedroom, but there they find that there is no Bronnach there. There is no girl. There are a lot of roses that are potted in pretty pots, and they're flowering, and they're pretty, and whatever. They found a box with girls' clothing and jewelry, and a nicely made bed and everything, but there is no girl there. No Bronnach. What's going on with her? We don't know. But they have to really quickly leave the room because Gerlach, of course, is getting home. So they're like, quickly leave the room. Anyway, they don't know what happened to Bronnach. They still haven't met Bronnach. So Iniana's kind of sad. Later on, she does have a moment again with Rian, which I'm not excited about. She's like sitting next to the fire with him, and they're getting like, oh, cozy. Like, she's very cold to him. She's like, I don't want you here. But then also she's like cozying up to him because she misses him. Which, girly, please. And then at that point, she does slip up in the conversation, and she kind of lets it drop that Violan is there. She drops his name, and Rihanna's like, oh my god, who is Violan? Where is Violan? It's like, is it Emrys? Because, of course, Violan has been pretending to be someone else. He has said his name was Emrys. So he's like, is it Emrys? Because, of course, Rihan has never seen Violan before, and just knows that Violan is the king, the Prince of Lochmar. But yeah, 2 days later, Violan, gone, left the building. They tell him that he had like a family emergency, but Inion knows like he doesn't have a family emergency. So she is convinced that Rian told Gerlach like he is the king of Lochmar, and that they got rid of him. And maybe even killed him. And all because Inion knows Rian is jealous of her relationship with Violan. So but Rian says that's definitely not the case. He didn't tell anyone. He promises her, but who to trust, who to trust. Since Violan is gone, the right-hand man of the king is gone. Of the king, I keep calling him king, but he's the magistrate. And his right hand is gone, so Rian takes the spot. So now Rian is there in the castle every single day instead of just dropping by for like an hour every day. Yay, I guess. Get more of Rian. And we do have a lot of discussions and talks between them two, but a lot of it is like where Inion just tells him off like, no, we can't trust anything that people have told us before, Why do you trust everything? And on the one hand, Rian is like, yeah, our dad has lied to us about things. I don't know why, I can't tell you why, but I just know that he's a good man, and that he has a reason to lie about certain things. and I don't trust what these Gardak people are telling us. Whenever those two talk in private, they just basically only have fights, and Inyon is like, please, why are you here? And they do have another fight, and Inyon says something really mean. Which also ain't good for her, I guess. Rian says, don't you understand? Because I love you, I will be the last of the Gardener Kings. Because he made a vow that he would either marry Inyan or he would never marry at all. So he wouldn't ever have children. And this is like toxic. He's like, I love you. So I will make sure all the Gardener Kings die because I love you and we can't be together. Like, that's so toxic, isn't it? Like manipulation. She responds, well, good. At least I have that. My gift to Garrett. I'll be the one who finally brought down the Gardener Kings. So you know, feisty. We're a couple weeks in, basically, and Inyon now decides that today's the day she's gonna tell Kaelach that she's his daughter, but the day runs a bit differently than she thinks it would. Because there's apparently a guest coming to the castle, so as soon as she wakes up, everyone is like already hustling and bustling, and she's like, she gets a lot of tasks to do and everything. So she's basically out all day cleaning the stables, making sure everything is neat. So she doesn't really get to telling her father what's been going on. And then it gets to the end of the day, and the guest is arriving, so she still hasn't had the time. But then she's waiting like in the door opening. She's about to walk to the stables. And then she notices who the guest is, which is quite interesting actually. I didn't really suspect this, but it was actually Kiara, the witch from the Shadow World. So I don't know what she has to do with Kaelach and what kind of dealings she has with Kaelach. And she notices Inyon, so she's like, oh my god, it's Brona. And then she goes in, and Inyon walks out basically. Then at one point she hears Rian running up to her. And he is screaming like, oh my god, Inyon, we need to leave right now. They're gonna do something terrible, we need to leave. And she's confused and she just runs with him. Because she's like, well, I used to trust him for 17 years. I guess I can trust him now. She goes with him and they run. And he's like, we just need to get to the oak tree because the oak tree will protect us. So they get to the oak tree, and in the meantime, Inyon is like, what's going on? Please just tell me what's been going on, please. And then he tries to tell her, and he's like, the witch, she's told him about you. She's told him that you are Bronach. And she's like, what? You are Bronach. There is no Bronach. Bronach is Inyon. Kaelach has just told everyone for years. Bronach has been living in a tower, but actually he doesn't know where Bronach is. And Rihanna's like, and he has something absolutely terrible planned. He's coming over, you need to hide. He's gonna do something terrible. But Inyon is like, no, that's not true. You're lying. And every single time, you know, this is the classic case of the miscommunication trope, you know, like, I need to tell you something, it's important, please listen to me. No, I won't listen to you, but please listen. No, I won't listen to you. And it's like, you know, I hate this trope so much. Like, in the time that you have said, please listen to me 5 times, you could have already told the story in between the other person saying no, basically. But yeah, we all kind of expected that Inyon is Bronach. I mean, like, to me it was quite clear. Like, as soon as I knew he had, like, a shrine for his missing daughter upstairs, it kind of made sense. And it's kind of, like, obvious, like, why didn't Inyon think about that herself? But still. They're in the oak tree, and it's like, oh my god, please listen to me. No, I won't listen to you. Anyway, Rian doesn't get to tell her that what Kaelach's terrible plan is. Rian just basically tells the tree to hold Inyon down. And then he steals her cloak from her, which is a significant thing because she has been making this cloak herself for the past weeks, months maybe. So it is very obviously her cloak. No one else has a cloak like this. He steals her cloak from her and he jumps out of the tree. And basically as soon as he hits the ground, he gets hit by a spear, which Kaelach actually has thrown, which shocked me a tiny bit. So Kaelach then jumps off the horse and then grabs his sword and basically goes to town on Rian. But yeah, Rian gets killed by Kaelach right in front of Inyon's eyes, and Inyon can't do anything because she's held back by the tree. While Kaelach is killing Rian, he says, I'm so sorry, Bronach. So it's quite obvious that Keilach thinks the person in the cloak, which in this case is Rian, is actually Inion, so his daughter Bronach. And that's why he tries to kill her and actually kills Rian, which is just all shocking and everything, you know? So Inion stays in a tree and she watches as Rian gets killed and then his body gets dragged behind the horse back to the castle. And at that moment she jumps out of the tree, she runs into the woods and she's like, I don't really know where to go. She's like shocked and everything. Why did my father try to kill me? Because Rian is dead, but he basically tried to kill me, that's the issue. But she doesn't know why, because of the miscommunication trope, of course, which I've never liked the miscommunication trope. I just don't like it. But Inion is like, where do I go? And then she thinks there's only one person in this entire country who doesn't like Keilach, so who might actually believe her. And that is Gwyneth, the old woman that they stayed with for a night in book 1. She expressed like thoroughly like that she does not like Keilach at all. She decides to run over there in the night, and she's like, I have like a little bit of time until Keilach finds out that the body he dragged isn't me, and when he starts looking for me. So she runs over to Gwyneth's house, and Gwyneth actually takes her in and takes care of her because her body is all like beaten up and everything. She doesn't feel good. She's nice to her. And then they have like a nice little conversation in the middle of the night, basically, about why Gwyneth doesn't like Keilach. We find out that Gwyneth's daughter Myrna was actually Keilach's wife. So yes, also Inion's mother. So that means Gwyneth is her grandmother. She doesn't tell Gwyneth this yet, but she just listens to Gwyneth talk about them. So Myrna is Gwyneth's daughter, and she tells her Inion that, like, first off, Keilach was a great guy and he really courted her and he came with roses every single day and it was amazing. But then as soon as they got married, he basically took her to the castle and Gwyneth never saw her again. Only like a few times. And then at the times that she did see her daughter, she looked really sick and Gwyneth was like, oh my god, she's sick, you need to do something about it. And Keilach was like, no, nothing's wrong, she's not sick, what are you talking about? And then, of course, Myrna died. So, Gwyneth has never forgiven Keilach for that, for taking her daughter away from her. Yeah, it makes sense that Gwyneth is angry at Keilach. But she's also the only person who thinks Keilach is a mean guy, so... But again, such a coincidence. Like, basically, every person she meets on these entire 2 books is in some way related to her, which, you know, it's all a bit really extremely convenient. So she's like, oh my god, this is my grandmother, I won't tell her, but this is my grandmother. And then the next evening there's banging on the door, and who do you guess? It's Keilach. And he's like, because of course he knows that his daughter Bronach is missing. That's what he thinks. Bronach is missing. And Gwyneth is her grandmother. So she's like, maybe she's hiding here. He's talking to Gwyneth like, tell me where Bronach is. Because we need to know. Because what does he say? He says a very specific thing. He says to Gwyneth, like, you have no idea what this means. I have no idea what will happen, of who is coming. So I guess someone is after him for the fact that Inion is still alive. And then he notices Inion there. And he's like, oh my god, Bronach. And he tries to kill her. So that's also when Gwyneth realizes that Inion is her granddaughter. She basically protects her. And then she's like, run. So Inion has the opportunity to run. She runs like a few lanes. And then she sees Keilach going after her and getting on his horse and riding somewhere else, thinking that she went that way. So she went back really quickly so she could say her final goodbyes to Gwyneth, because while she was running, Gwyneth was struck with a sword and she was dying. So yeah, basically everyone important dies. And then she still doesn't know what to do, and in the meantime she's like upset, of course, because Rian is dead. But the thing with Rian dying that I hate is that it basically... him dying took away from all the toxicity of him. Because now suddenly Inion is thinking like, oh my god, I miss him so much, and he was right all along. So basically, she kind of seems to forgive him for every single thing that he does, even like the stalking 2 weeks before he died, just because she didn't want to go home, but he did. And it's all a bit toxic and weird, and I don't like it that it seems like she now thinks that, you know, Rihanna's the most perfect guy because he was right, he didn't lie. And it just, I don't know, it's just a bit weird. Indian doesn't really know where to go, so she thinks, I'm just gonna go back to the island, this is the only place I know where to go. She's also just very distraught, and she's like thoughts like, if I just don't get there, then I'm also fine. I don't know, I don't mind anymore. She's like all over the place. So she steals Ireland's boat, because she sees Ireland's boat over there. And she steals the boat and she takes it out to the sea. And this is actually where Owl, the goddess, comes back in. Because she is like fighting against Inion with her wind. While she's out on the sea and the sea is like really, really rough, the boat actually breaks down. And she is dragged underwater. And she's like, okay, it's my time to die, I guess. Bye-bye. But then she wakes up in a bed, and it turns out that the goddess Owl has spoken to the sea fairies and got them to drag Inion to the shore. And then she was found there by Dilwan, who is a priestess of Owl, and Owl basically guided her to there and told her to take care of her. So Dilwan is now taking care of her. And it turns out she is basically in the only good hiding place in Garrett, because literally every single person in the country, for some reason, in the last 15 years, has forgotten about the goddess as soon as the Gardener Kings left, because apparently the Gardener Kings got their powers from Owl. So they're also called the Brothers of Owl. And since they left the country, no one has thought about Owl even anymore. No one remembers that there is a priestess living there. So it's actually a really great place to live for Inion for now, since Kelak is still looking for her. And she's like really sad about Rian, of course. And at first she's like, I don't know if I can keep on living. In the end, she does decide to live, and she decides to stay with Dilwan and help her do her priestess duties. And she learns more and more about Owl. And she also finds out that Dilwan doesn't have a lot of food growing for the winter, and it's almost gonna be winter, like frozen winter. So then they won't have enough food to last the entirety of winter together. So Inion decides to go out to the woods, because she feels like that's also the only other safe place she can go, because Kelak would never ever go to the woods. Or like maybe when he's truly desperate, but otherwise no. So she feels like she can go in there safely and just hunt for food. So she teaches herself how to hunt with a spear. And at first, like in the first video, I said that I really liked the idea. I don't know if this is like an actual thing, but I saw the woods basically as a metaphor for Rian, because Inion was afraid of the woods, and the only reason she would go there was because of Rian. And it kind of gave me the vibes like she wanted to visit him, even though she knew he had a dark side, something like that. So now, for some reason, she is no longer afraid of the woods, and she actually freaking loves the woods. Which I think is a bit sad with the metaphor, because it really makes me feel like, you know, she's just forgiven Rian for everything, just because he's dead. Even though that isn't like discussed or anything, it's also not like a discussion point, like maybe I should forgive him for some reason, or why I should or shouldn't. It's just, for some reason, suddenly all his bad quirks just never come up again. And it's only like, yeah, he was right, and I miss him so much. And that's it. She's out there hunting in the woods, and she really, really loves the woods. And she starts understanding the trees more and such, and she kind of feels their feelings a bit more. On the one hand, I said, like, I didn't like it, because I feel like the woods are a metaphor for Rian, and it feels like she is like making his bad side good or something. But I also like it because it gives me the vibes as if maybe she can become a Gardener King in the next book, for perhaps someday. Because it feels like she starts to feel the plants a bit more, just the same way Rian could. I don't know, maybe she's now chosen to replace Rian now that he's dead. That would be pretty cool, in my opinion. She basically teaches herself how to use a spear and how to hunt and whatever. She finally decides to stop fighting Owl and just listens to what she has to say and where she guides her, which I feel like she should have done long ago, because literally never ever it seemed like Owl had bad intentions for her. The only reason she doesn't like Owl is because she asked Owl for her and Ryan to... I keep calling him Ryan. Her and Ryan to stay together forever, and that didn't happen. And that's basically the only thing. So, I don't know. I don't get it. So she also starts to have some interest in what Dilwyn is doing in her daily life as a priestess. And she's also the only remaining priestess, may I add. And there are no other priestesses of Owl. Just Dilwyn. Dilwyn is the only one who knows about Owl anymore, I guess, and the people on the island. So she just makes like little mixes and potions and tiny things every day to offer to Owl, and Owl seems to love them. So she has like this really big shelf of stuff, ingredients basically. And Enion finds a vial there that contains blood. And by the color of it, because it looks like rose petals, this is one of the few times it comes back, she realizes that it is Rion's blood. And the way she realizes this is because she describes when Rion died, his blood flowed out of him like rose petals. And the phrase blood like rose petals has been repeated over 12 times in this book. I could detect 12 times just quickly going through the book. Could have been more. And literally blood like rose petals in the rest of the chapter after Rian dies has been mentioned 3 times. In basically 2 pages. And it's just annoying me. At one point I'm like, oh my god, please use a different metaphor. But also, this way she realizes that it is Rion's blood. Because she did notice when she was sitting in the tree and Rion had just died that someone came over and put his blood in a vial. And she just assumed that it was Kiara, the Shadow Witch. But now it turns out that it was indeed Dilwyn. And Dilwyn was guided there by Owl to do that. And Inion finds the vial and she keeps it because she wants a part of Rion close to her. So she just keeps the vial of his blood like against her. She makes like a thing so she can hang it around her neck, basically. It's just weird. Like she just holds onto a vial of blood from a dead person when she feels iffy. I don't know, it just weirds me out. Anyway, she has more and more discussions with Owl as well. Especially after the fact that she decides to become a priestess of Owl. Because she thinks that it's basically the only thing left that she can do to basically honor her father and do something for him, since she can't come back on her promises for him. Because she had promised to keep Rion safe and she had promised to come back, and those are 2 things she can't do. So she thinks, I'll just become a priestess of Owl and my father will be proud of me. So she does that, and that way, since she is now a priestess, she can also see Owl and she can directly speak to her. She does reminisce a lot about Rian again, and like, oh my god, if we were to get married, we would have lived here in the woods and it would have been perfect, blah 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 blah. Like, oh my god, please stop. And basically everything does go better and more smooth after she actually becomes a priestess of Owl and she follows Owl's advice. Everything just goes a lot smoother, so... Then one day in the woods she runs into a wolf while hunting, but it turns out it's not a wolf, it's actually Iris. She's back. She's wearing a hood, wolf cloak, wolf skin, so that's why she looks like a wolf. But they basically have a discussion and Inion is kind of like done with all the lies, so all the truths come spilling out and they form a very tight, close friendship. And basically, Iris is the only person who knows about who Inion really is, who her father was growing up, who her father is, her actual father, that kind of stuff. Iris knows everything at one point. And Iris completely believes all of this, which is shocking. But that's because Iris says Kerak tried to kill her too. The man is just out here killing teenage girls all over. But that's because, of course, she is trading with the other countries and he doesn't want that. So he decides to kill her because she wouldn't listen. So she's like fully anti-Kerak now as well. So together they decide they were gonna stop him. That's what they decided. And also she mentioned that she broke up with Aiden, basically, because he was really sad about her wanting to keep trading, and he was like, you can't keep doing that, it's too dangerous, I can't keep you safe like that, and I'm not coming with you if you're going to Turgwyn. And she ended up going to Turgwyn anyway, so that's when they broke up. They make a plan to catch Kellar, because they want to basically lure him in with Inion, because he wants to kill Inion, and then they want to do it in a place where they have hidden some people from the country, so they can see that Kerlach is not like a nice good man, but he actually is actively trying to kill a little girl, basically. That's the plan, but the details don't really work yet. So they basically meet up a few times to go over everything. And for some reason, this is also the point later on in the story where she realizes that Atha had like powers to make the plants grow extremely quickly. And that is also why people think the lands were cursed after he left, that nothing would grow. He didn't curse it. While he was there, he made sure that the plants grow extra well, and the land just isn't viable. And now that he's left, his powers aren't there to bless the lands, basically. So he didn't curse the lands, he blessed them actually while he was there. So it's more of a thing like, oh my god, Atha is a good guy. And he didn't do anything bad, actually. And one day, Inion goes out to see Iris, because Iris is hiding in the sea caves. And she walks into the cave that she thinks is Iris' cave. But then she bumps into Firelan again. Yay, he's back, our boy. And apparently no one ratted him out. Turns out he says that Kelach told him he can no longer hold him there, keep him safe there, so he has to leave. So he left and he stayed in this cave. And this is actually the cave that Firelan grew up in, that he was stored away in during the 7 years that his father was off the throne. And it just turns out that Firelan has known Kelach all his life, basically. And that Kelach was a friend of his father's. And the king, so Atha, didn't really want to have anything to do with the king of Lockmore, because the king of Lockmore was very cruel, and he didn't like his way of ruling. And then, while the king kind of sent the king of Lockmore away, and Firelan at that, Kelach jumped in as the second hand of the king, basically, and he just kind of swooped in and became buddies with the king of Lockmore. So then, when the king of Lockmore was taken off his throne by the rebellion, he offered to harbor them in that exact cave. And it is actually also a cave where Kelach kept a lot of food, so they basically had a great time there, except for the fact that they couldn't leave the cave for 7 years. So Iris also comes into this cave. They introduced the two to each other, basically, which at first doesn't go very smoothly. Doesn't matter. They form a trio to bring down Kelach, but Fallon isn't really into it. He's like, I owe him my life, so I can't go and try and kill the guy, basically. So you two do it, but I'm willing to teach you how to fight, so you have some combat skills to use. So now we just go into a period of just training, going back and forth to the cave, and Inion, of course, growing closer with Fallon again, which I love to see. But it's just weird, because she keeps thinking about Rian at points to where she's like, Rian will be too jealous, I will break his heart if I go with Fallon, that kind of thing. And even going as far as basically leaning into what Fallon wants to do, and then imagining Rian is there in his place. So just basically using Fallon as a replacement, which is just really weird and not a nice thing to do. I reach for his fingers with mine and let them entwine. My other hand finds the copper vial against my chest and closes around it. So, you know, the vial with the blood of Rian in it. I fall asleep that way. I can almost imagine that he's alive in here with me. You know, while she's holding another man's hand. And at some point in the story, like, she still goes out to the woods and everything, and at one point Awel leads her to a tree, and she listens to the tree, and the tree opens up, and her father's sword, so Atha's sword, is hidden there, because that's where Rian has hidden it before he went to Kelach's castle, and he had told the tree to only open up for him or for Inion. So Inion can find the sword, actually. So now Fallon can also teach her how to sword fight, instead of just fighting with a spear. And because this cave is near the sea, it basically, the entrance closes off with water when the tide comes in. So if Inion wants to leave, she has to leave on time before the tide comes in, otherwise she's stuck inside the cave. So one night, of course, this happens. and they have a night together, just the two of them, Violan and Inion. And they do have a nice time, and they grow very close. But even at one point, he kisses her, and she basically almost throws up, just because she thinks about Rion and how sad he will be if she goes with Violan, which is just, oh my god, this man is still manipulating and toxic while he's dead. He's not even around anymore, and he's still in her mind. And I don't like it. I want the man gone from the story. I want her to be either on her own, just doing her own thing for herself, not for Rian, or go with Violan, either one of them. So yeah, I just think it would be really good for her if she just basically also isn't with Violan for a while, but just learns to basically grieve Rian on her own. And then as soon as she is doing great, then she gets with Violan. That's kind of the progress that I hope for her. Like, he doesn't need to fix her and help her. She can do that on her own. And then it's just healthy for her to move on finally. That's what I hope for her. Anyway, we'll see about that, I guess. She also finds out that when Violan was there in those 7 years growing up, there was like a giant food storage there, like I just said. And this is how she figures out how Kealarch actually manipulated the entire population. Because we still hadn't figured that out. Like, how could it be that he lied to an entire country? Well, he did this by going to the people, demanding their food in the name of the king, and then not saying anything to the king and just keeping all the food in that one cave. And then anytime he would, basically steal food from people who were already almost starving, he would say, the king, he demands it. I'm sorry, I just have to take it from you. The king demands it. So everyone was thinking that this king is like cruel and that he's like feasting up there with all their food. They have nothing and they're dying. But it's all Kealarch's fault, it turns out. So that was actually pretty smart of him. Like, he's a smart guy, I'll give him that. And in the meantime, the king, of course, had no idea what's going on. But that's also why he was able to pull up a rebellion so quickly. So now that we know what happened all those years ago, we know for sure Kealarch is a liar. Everything Atha said and everything the people on the island have said to Inyon are all true. So that's great, I guess. In the meantime, Kealarch is still looking for Inyon, and he's getting crazier and crazier because he needs to find her. And to one of their meetings, Irelis brings a stone that she has found, which is the flat stone, but it has some things written on it, some markings. She found a stone in the camp of one of those Lockmore raider groups, basically. Violan is able to basically translate the rock, and it turns out that it states the date, the time, and the location, and then Kealarch's mark. So it turns out, Violan explains this, Violan himself was in contact with Kealarch for a long time, because Lockmore didn't have a lot of food, and Kealarch needed his people to think that he was a really, really strong, fearless man, a brave man. So he got a deal with Violan. Violan would send raider troops over who would steal food from the villages, and then at the same time Kealarch would come in and he would chase them away just on his own, and they would run, that was the deal. And then the Lockmore people would have a bit of food again, and Kealarch would look like the absolute hero to his people. But Violan assumed that this stopped the second that his father died, and he was no longer in contact with Kealarch about this. But turns out Kealarch is actually in contact with Violan's brother Drest, who is also a traitor and who took over the throne. So Violan is like, so he's working with my brother who wants me dead while he's harboring me to hide me from my brother. He's just playing all cards, and now he sent me away from my only safe place, and I'm hiding in this cave that my brother knows. He basically sent me to my death. So now suddenly he does want to help. So he's like, okay, we're gonna fight him, the three of us. And they make a plan with this rock, because now they know a time, date, and place of one of these raids. So their plan is to ambush the Lockmore people, scare them off, and then also ambush Kealarch and fight him. And since it's in a village and a lot of people will be there, they'll scare him, and because he doesn't know these people and he knows that he might die, he will run off and he'll be like a coward, and people will see this and his reputation will just be damaged. That's basically the goal. They have like 8 days left or something to plan this, so they start planning it. And one day Ilion wakes up in the morning and there's banging on the door again, so we're like, oh my god, is it Kealarch again? No, No. This time it is no one other than Kiara the Shadow Witch. Because she has followed the scent of the Gardener King. Because remember when she had Rion's blood in the Shadow World? Rion gave his blood instead of Idion's blood. She figured out that Rion was a Gardener King. And his blood is apparently very, very great. So she followed the scent to there. And then of course, Idion was like, he's dead. What do you want from me? But, you know, she has his blood there. So Kiara was like, oh my god, just give me the blood. And Idion was like, no, just leave. So Kiara leaves. But Kiara does leave with one quote that I found very interesting, and I'll get back to on that later. But the quote is, he may be dead, but even dead, his blood has more life in it than hers or mine ever did. And with hers, she means Inion's. I'll get back on that later with some of my theories. Basically, they're in the cave again, just discussing their plans and training especially. And this time there's someone else with them, because Aiden has followed Irelis to this cave. Because Aiden has heard rumors from everyone that Irelis is a traitor. Because she has been speaking to everyone about the king possibly coming back. Because she wants to basically spread a bit of hope among the people. Like, if they are gonna put up a rebellion against Kealach, they need to know that there is something better to replace him with. So she is just telling people about the king. And that's why everyone thinks she's a traitor. So Aiden's like, I need to see it for myself. And then he finds Irelis there in the cave with Inion and Violan. He doesn't know who Violan is, but... And he's like, oh my god, it's true. But now he knows too much. They do try to explain things a tiny bit to him. And they do drop Violan's names. And that's why he's like, in cahoots with the Lockmorogs. That's not done. You're like, but you can't tell anyone. Please just don't tell anyone. And they do let him live. Only because Inion allows him to live. Because she knows he just loves Irelis too much that he won't ever tell anyone about this. Because if he did, Kealach would find Irelis and he would kill her. And of course, Aiden doesn't want that. So Inion trusts him, basically, and sends him off. So that's just, you know, a small thing that happened in the meantime. In the moment when Irelis and Aiden are there, they also find out what happened to the shepherd, because Inion finally tells them, you know, the shepherd that Ryan killed using the tree. She does tell them that it was the tree, and because Irelis knows about all the Gardener Kings and what they can do, she understands what happened, basically. But it's kind of like written down as like, oh my god, this is gonna make Irelis doubt everything. But it doesn't. It's just like, oh my god, shocking, and then it's never mentioned again. So, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that information, I'm sorry. We're getting to like the final 3 chapters. So they make a plan. They're gonna dress up as animals to make themselves look very scary. And they're gonna attack the Lockmores and then fight Kealach. Both Dilwyn, the priestess, and Awel, the goddess, are basically against this. Because they keep telling Aeon, like, are you sure you want to do this? You need to do, like, you seem to not know who you are. And this is where I agree. At this point, the only reason she is living her best life, basically. She is hunting, she is living in the woods, which she wants. She is living with Dilwyn, she is being a priestess. She isn't being hunted over there. She's basically living a great life. But the only reason she wants to kill Kealach is to take revenge for Rian. So it's again doing something for Rian. And I just want the girl to live for herself. She's like, he's dead and she's still living for him and doing what he wants, basically. I feel like that's what Awel and Dilwyn are trying to tell her, like, you don't know who you are anymore. You've lost yourself. I think that's what they're referring to, at least I hope so. But yeah, she's just like, I don't understand all of you. And it's just a bit weird because every single time Dilwyn or Awel say anything to her, it's like a bit cryptic. But most of the time you can understand them. Like, some of the times there's like, I still have no clue what they're saying. But most of the times it is pretty clear, but Inion still doesn't understand. And you're like, oh my god, please. It's so easy. It's so simple. And you're just gonna ruin it for yourself because you're gonna run away like Angie because you don't want to listen to Awel. Well, she's just saying very logical things. Anyway, from Awel and from Dilwyn, Inion does find out that Kealach was actually Atha's best friend when they were growing up. So she had just this thought in her head that Atha didn't ever tell her about Kealach. She knew nothing about him. But he did tell her a lot about him. Because he basically every night he told her stories about this little boy that he grew up with and that he had adventures with and whatever. And that was his absolute best friend. So she did hear a lot about Keylach. She just didn't hear the stories about him being a traitor because Atha didn't want her to hear all of those stories. Owl kind of amplifies this by saying, your father told you everything you needed to know before you left the island. She keeps repeating this as well. Atha forgave Keylach for what he did. So that is the only thing Inyon needs to know. Her father forgave him. So why are you holding a grudge? You're basically just doing this for Rion again. And then she also finds out that this is just so conflicting to me. Atha was actually there when she was born and when Myrna died. And he held her while Keylach was crying over his dead wife. So, Atha knows that Inyon is Keylach's daughter. Or at least he suspects it, because he did find her in a tree, but that was like a day after she was born, so, and he has seen her, he has held her, so I'm pretty sure he recognizes her. So he at least has to have some sort of suspicion that Keylach is her father. So why? Tell me why. Atha doesn't want her going to that country, because it's too dangerous, people are gonna, or Keylach is gonna find out, and he's gonna want to kill her. That's Atha's thought the entire time. But she's going to the country because she wants to figure out who her father is. But he knows, and he knows that who her father is also the biggest danger to her. Why did he make her, like, let her go anyway? He could have just told her and she would have known. And they wouldn't have had to, like, travel there and have, like, all dangerous things happen to them and then Rian die. I don't understand. Because he has to have known. So that confuses me a lot. Don't know if that's discussed later on or if it's just a really big plot hole. I don't know. Basically, we're nearing the end of the book. Almost everything has fallen into place now. Almost everything. There's still a few questions we have, but they do the ambush. They dress up as animals. Inyon goes on with her deer antlers. And they have face paint and everything, so they look unrecognizable and a bit scary. They ambush the Lochmorogs. They chase them away. There was a little bit of a moment in there where Violan seems to not really do anything. But turns out later that he saw that his brother dressed was actually at the lead of the group. So he was like kind of shocked and he didn't really know what to do. Because he also doesn't really want to kill his brother. He does for the fact that his brother wants to kill him. But he also doesn't because that's what kings do. Kings kill whoever needs to be killed. And he's like, I don't want to be a king like that. So he doesn't really want to kill his brother. He wants to be better than his brother and not kill him. So it was a bit like, oh my god, shocking moment, I guess. I'm pretty sure this will just be a thing in the next book that will be discussed. So they have ambushed the Lochmorogs. The Lochmorogs have fled. So the three of them move over to the village where they ambush Keylach. They attack him. The man apparently is really fearless because he goes in to fight 3 people. He does, like, it's a big fight and everything. And he does at one point spare down Iris. And she's, like, badly wounded. She's hit, like, right under the ribs on the left side of her. So she's on the floor bleeding out. And Inyon goes to fight with Keylach while Violan is tending to Isla's wound. And in the meantime, the entirety of the village is watching them. And Inyon and Keylach are in, like, this big fight. And at a certain point, Inyon just gains a lot of strength from, seeing her, basically her best friend being spared down by this man. So she just goes into full fighting mode. And somehow she ends up disarming Keylach and with her spear to his throat. But right when she goes in to kill him, she's reminded of the thought, like, her father, Atha, in this case, forgave this man. So why should she have basically the right to kill him? Why should she kill him if her father forgave him for everything that he did? She hesitates, basically, she thinks. And in that moment, Keylach is able to, like, tackle her, basically. And then they have another fight. Inyon takes out her sword. And this is where Keylach gets scared. Because he does recognize the sword. It is Atha's sword. And he's like, oh my god, what's that sword? And he starts fighting a bit less. And Inyon is like, yeah, this is the sword of the Gardener King. And he is returning. This throne is not yours, whatever. Keylach does get really scared, and he flees, actually, while all of his followers are watching. Mission accomplished, I guess. So they go and take care of Iris, but all villagers are watching, and they are afraid the villagers might hurt them, so they need to run. And they also need to run because what if Kayla comes back with like an army or whatever? They are trying to bind her wounds, they're trying to run, but she's heavy and she's unconscious and it's everything. And then they run into the river, and on the boat over there is Aiden. So they gave Arliss to Aiden, who rows her to the next village where like Arliss's cousin lives or something, and he basically takes care of her there. Viola and Inyon just go back to their respective caves, I guess. And Inyon also ends up making the decision that she is no longer gonna fight Kelar, because it's not her fight to fight. Which I was very confused about at first reading it. I was like, why? But, you know, like I said, she is fighting it because Rian wanted to fight him. Not because she wanted to fight him. Not because her father wants to fight him, because her father forgave him. Rian wanted to fight Kelar and take over his throne. But she's not there to take over the throne. She does think that Kelar needs to get off the throne, so she does basically spur Violan and Aerys on to dethrone him. But the weird thing is, like, why would you let Violan? He has nothing to do with his country. He just happens to be here because he's on the run. Like, it doesn't really have to do anything with him. So why he's still doing it when it's not even Ilion's fight to fight? I'm not sure. I understand that Aerys is footing it, but Violan is still in it. He wants to do it. So it's like days later. They say a few days later, but that means like a lot happens in just a few days. I'm assuming it's a few more days. It's days later. Aerys and Violan are in the cave meeting to, you know, discuss their new plans to take down Kelar. And Inyon doesn't want to join the fight, so she's also not joining the meeting. She's basically just enjoying her life as a priestess, and that's what she should have been doing all along. So she is just running around, frolicking with Awel. She's actually happy. I feel like this is the first time since she left the island that she seems happy in this book, so it's really nice. And she seems to be more at peace with the fact that Rian is gone. Like, she still misses him. She mentions him like, I miss him. But she's more like, you know, I just miss him. That's it. And she's more at peace with it and not like obsessing over him again. And then she's just walking through the forest. And Owl, with her wind, is like, oh my god, you need to follow me. So her wind is blowing, whatever. Blowing her in a certain direction. And she's actually pushing Inion straight towards Kalak's castle. And Inion's like, fine. I trust Owl. So she's just following her. And then she runs into like this big, long stroke of flowers. Just loads and loads and loads of flowers. Just running through that barren field where everything was burnt and nothing wanted to grow anymore. There's a big stroke of land just filled with loads of flowers. And they're running wild and everything. Beautiful. She runs straight to Violan and Aerys in the cave. She even dives because the tide is in and there is no entrance. She dives straight into the cave and she's like, oh my god, guys. Rian is still alive. And that's how the book ends. That is how the book ends. So, it's a cliffhanger. Wouldn't say it's a nice cliffhanger because I don't want the man to live. Well, I don't mind him living. I just don't want him in my girl's life because he's toxic. So yeah, that's how the book ends. I'm just gonna stick on some lashes and then I'm gonna get back to you with my final collective thoughts on this book and some final theories I have for the next book. So be right back. Okay, so I'm back. The look is done and we're just gonna discuss the final thoughts of the book because I have a few. And first of all, I want to mention, like, I don't know if you remember everything that I said in the previous video, like my hopes and expectations for part 2. I bet you know that they're all ruined. So, the thing that I liked so much about book 1 is that how it felt like it was some sort of commentary on like leaving a toxic relationship, leaving some sort of cult, like the community that you grew up in. Like, Inyon knew only that community and only everything that she's been taught by them is everything she ever knew. And it seems very much like a commentary on cult culture, how she's like escaping from that group and learning about the real world and such. But now we find out that everything that the cult has been telling her is right. And everything that the real world has been telling her is a lie again. So it basically like undid all of the interesting things that it did in book 1. I do like that it gave us like plot twists, like, oh my god, we think everything is a lie and then everything is not a lie and then everything is a lie again. And it does like make for a good second book, but I just find it very sad that, you know, that the thing that I found a bit of like interesting depth in book 1 is just basically taken away by book 2. Especially also with Rian coming back and the fact that he dies and then suddenly she's like all obsessed with him and she misses him. I get that she misses him, that's fine. He was your brother for 17 years, your lover for like 2 weeks. Gross. And then he died. So I guess it's fine that she grieves him. It's fine, but it's almost as if she just has completely forgotten all the toxic things he did, even though he was doing them right up until the moment he died, basically. Just because he died and he was right about everything and that is why he died, she's like, oh my god, he's right about everything, so he's perfect. And even though he was manipulating me and controlling me, he's perfect. I don't know. I don't like it. Ooh, we're gonna go back on the rose petals. Did I discuss that? Yeah, blood flowing like rose petals. I feel like I've discussed that. I basically have 2 different theories on what the 3rd book will be like. So my overall thoughts on the 2nd book, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I liked reading it. I just didn't like the fact that it basically reversed, I guess, all the good things that it did in book 1. Like basically the social commentary, I guess. But in general, it was a fun book, but there were some things throughout that I just didn't understand. I didn't like, but we've discussed most of them already, so you know that. But in general, I thought it was a pretty decent book. And I like it, and I want to read book 3. So my guesses for that book are... I have two theories. First of all, Rian is alive. That's what they said at the end of the book. And the 3rd book will have a love triangle, because now Inion has to choose between Falan and Rian. Because she still loves Rian, but she has also found out that she kind of loves Falan as well. So there will be a love triangle, definitely. If Rian is still alive, but I'll discuss that soon. And my guess is maybe Rian will become king of Garrett. Falan will become king of Lockmore. There will maybe be a war between Garrett and Lockmore. Inion will marry Falan, hopefully. And then she will become queen of Lockmore, but because she is a priestess of Awel, she will also become some sort of gardener king. So both countries will flourish because both countries have a gardener king. That's one thought. Second thought, Rian is not alive, because what I'm thinking is maybe his body was dragged behind the horse by Kaelar. And he was dragged like from the castle, maybe into the woods or something. Which is exactly the stroke of land where the flowers were growing. And there's a quote from Kiara. He may be dead, but even dead, his blood has more life in it than hers or mine ever did. What if his blood just made the earth viable again? And on those spots, flowers grew. But he's not alive. His blood just rejuvenated the earth, basically. And this is also a quote by Awel. She keeps saying blood is everything. She keeps repeating that. And Inion is like, what does that mean? She's like, be patient, child. I'm trying to show you. But that's like a few days before Awel goes out and shows Inion the patch of flowers. So I feel like blood is everything. Blood is the source of life. The essence of life. It rejuvenated the ground and it sprouted new flowers. So Rian is dead, but his blood just seeped into the ground and made for beautiful flowers in spring in ground that used to not grow anything. That's my thought right now. But if Rian is actually still alive, I feel like that blood thing is just a thing anyway. But if there's just the thought like if Rian is alive or not, I'm not sure. Could be that he's dead. I don't mind. I don't mind either way. I just hope that Inion ends up with Falan. But we'll discuss that in the next video. And then I have one final thought. There is barely any visuals to the characters. Like, I have no visual representation going on in my mind. Like, looking at the character. I can't see the characters in front of me. I see what they're doing. I just can't see them because there's not really any description of them. There's no description of, like, what color hair Inion has. Or if she's tall, if she's big, if she's small, if she's, I don't know what color skin she has, nothing. At least I feel like maybe I missed it and I'm just dumb, could be. But I have no visualization of any of the characters. I just know Falan has light blonde hair and that's it. I also don't know what Kaelar looks like. I know he's graying a bit. That's it. I feel like it could have added a tiny bit more if we knew what the characters looked like, instead of it being a bit more of a self-insert, I guess. But in general, I like the book, and I'm excited to see what book 3 has for us. We have discussed all my theories now. There will be probably a war between Lockmore and Garrett, I'm pretty sure, because there will be something with Drest. Kaelach will be bumped off the throne, hopefully. And Rian is either dead or alive, but his blood definitely gave those flowers life, that's for sure. That's it. That's finally my full discussion of We All Hunger by Monica Boothe, book 2 of the Gardener Kings trilogy. And next week I will be back with book 3. I'm very excited. Leave all your thoughts in the comments down below so we can have a fun little discussion. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. If you want to see even more from me, my blog, my socials, my gaming channel, and everything else you need to know about me is all linked down below so you can check that out as well. And that's gonna be it for me today. I want to thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Toodles! Also, this is the look. We have roses inspired by the cover